Hi, I'm Erik Hall, the Associate Press Sports Editor's second vice president and the managing editor of the Telegraph in Alton, Illinois. And I'm joined by Ainslie Lee, the college sports editor at USA Today's Center for Community Journalism. And Ainslie, you just completed the 2024-2025 APSE Diversity Fellowship. Congratulations on completing the program.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It was a great way to wrap up a fun couple of days there in Minneapolis at convention. Their conference, I guess.
Yeah, interchangeable terms. I hear people call it both. What did you enjoy most about the APSE Summer Conference in Minneapolis and be able to go to that as part of the fellowship?
Yeah, so I think for me, it was just being in the same room and under the same roof of so many, like-minded individuals. I think we kind of have to be the same kind of crazy to be in the industry that we are. I graduated from UF in 2020, and so I'm a COVID grad, if you will, and so never really got to experience the more traditional newsroom setting where I was, like I said, under the same roof as people I work with or people in the industry, and so there were so many people there in Minneapolis that I've talked to, whether it be people that I work in the same company with that we talk every week through a computer screen. Or there's so many people that I met who maybe we've talked or networked or talked about job opportunities and what have you, and I'd never met them. And it was just the way the timeline worked for me in terms of my career and my graduation and things like that. So I think it was with the exception of maybe some media days that I've gone to, as my time as a beat reporter, which is obviously a much different situation. It was really probably my first time being, face to face with so many people in the industry. So that was probably my favorite part. I mean, I joked with a couple people that they had no idea I was as short as I was. Apparently I looked taller on camera, and there was a lot of people where I was like, I had no idea that you were 6'3", 6'4", because we all kind of the same height on the computer screen.
You talk about the networking, which is an incredible part of it. There's also all the panels and sessions. I'm sure you went to a lot of those. And what were some takeaways you got from those this summer?
Yeah, so for me, I edit reporters who cover. I edit for the University of Florida, University of Georgia, Duke, UNC, and NC State. And so when you think about those programs, especially those North Carolina teams, it's very men's basketball heavy. You go to Florida and Georgia, it's football and, men's basketball heavy. And, I've been wanting to find a way to incorporate more women's sports coverage. And so for me, one of the panels that stuck out to me was the one with Lindsay Schnell that she was a part of for just covering women's sports better. Ways to kind of meet an audience where it is, for some of these and for some of our outlets, it's these women's sports programs, whether it be, UF women's basketball or Duke women's basketball, UNC's women's basketball. I mean, those are all, those two Duke and North Carolina programs, and NC State are programs that made the NCAA tournament, made runs in the NCAA tournament, and we cover them. We call it parachuting in, right? We parachute in for the tournament, and that's kind of the extent of our coverage for much of the year, unless there's a really, really, inspiring or strong feature story that we kind of hear about and we want to write. And so I've, as an editor, I've only been in this position for probably 9 or 10 months right now. So in those 9 or 10 months, a lot of my brainstorming, what keeps me up at night is how can we do a better job of women's sports coverage, at these colleges that I work with. And so that was a big one. I think Mike Sherman, who's a colleague of mine, he's one of the guys that I report to in my position. He did a great panel in terms of, how to be a dynamic leader for our dynamic reporters and leading those one-on-one meetings, which again is hard, when there's a camera screen between us and we're not interacting face to face. So those two are big ones that really stuck out to me in Minneapolis. But I thought all of them, were really, really insightful. There were really great conversations in all of them. Even, I don't take myself as like a number gal. I think that's why I got into journalism, is I wasn't good at math. and stuff about the data or finding ways to monetize the coverage that we're doing. I feel like every single one that I attended, even the high school ones, because I do have 2 high school reporters in my pocket as well. There was so much that I was able to learn from just so many people that were there. I mean, I think I feel like I'm just naming every single one at this point, but even to wrap up the kind of time that we had there was the how we did it and some of the best work that we highlighted there in Minneapolis. No wonder that was some of our best work, because it's like, dang, why didn't I think of that, or why didn't one of my people think of that, or something like that. So it was just, all of it was really, really good. All of it was really good.
You talked a little bit ago about going to Florida. Could you talk about your career path and your experience in journalism so far to this point?
Sure. Yeah. So I think all through high school, I was dead set on going the sports medicine route, like athletic training route. I competed in high school in athletic training. That was a thing we had there in, Florida high schools, and we would compete in taping ankles, and I was really good at it. I will say I was really good at it. But once I got to college, and I quickly realized, man, there's just as much, actually a lot more medicine as there is sport in this. And again, not great at my math and sciences were not my strong suit. And so I said, I don't know if this is for me. I started at Stetson University. And like I said, was on that health route and took a journalism elective. It was the only journalism class that Stetson offered. And, one of the things was we had to go write a sports story. So I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I went back home to my high school, and my brother was the quarterback of our high school football team at the time. And I was like, I'm going to be here anyways. I might as well make that what I'll write about. And so I write about it, and, I'm sitting in the bleachers, taking stats, and the guy next to me goes, who are you keeping stats for? I was like, oh, myself and my class. And he introduced himself. It was Aaron Brand, who at the time was the editor of the Ocala Star-Banner sports section. And I mean, of all the bleachers for me to sit in, I sat next to this guy. It was kind of fate, if you will. And he says, well, if you want me to read that before you submit it to your professor, let me know. And so I sent him a DM on Twitter that night and sent him my story. And he's, gave me a couple edits and sent it back. He's like, most of the feedback was, yeah, this was really good. This was really good. He's like, one note though, you forgot to report the final score. And so I don't know. I just, between that and, that one class and a really good professor there at Stetson, I was like, I think I really like this. Ironically, my parents and my grandparents always told me I was going to be a sideline reporter. I kind of never believed them, and obviously went a different route on the writing side of things. But, when I decided I was going to do it, within about a month's time, I had packed up my dorm there at Stetson, withdrawn, and enrolled at the University of Florida, and was just 10 toes down there at Florida, where I worked with ESPN Gainesville, which was the flagship radio station there. I did some radio stuff, did some writing stuff, did a semester or two with the Independent Florida Alligator, which is the student-owned newspaper there. Covered football, I covered softball, and covered swim. So got a taste for it all. All through college, I freelanced at the Ocala Star-Banner, which is my hometown paper. And like I said, graduated in 2020. Weren't a ton of sports jobs open, so decided to take a general reporter job at the Ocala Gazette, which was, the competitor to the Ocala Star-Banner, and took a general reporting role and did planning and development, zoning, city council, all the really, really, obviously COVID numbers, all the really, really boring stuff, in addition to kind of overseeing the high school sports coverage for that paper. And, that was so, I think it was about 9 months, but so instrumental for me because, now I could do a FOIA request in my sleep if I needed to, and I don't worry about having to call, public information officers with the sheriff's department. Like, I learned so much in doing that. But when the Gainesville Sun started opening up jobs, or just everybody in general started opening up sports jobs, but the Gainesville Sun specifically opened up a prep job there. I knew I wanted to get back in sports full time. And so I did that for 2.5 years as the Gainesville Sun's prep, and did a little bit of UF stuff. A lot of the women's team, softball, gymnastics, volleyball, things like that. And so did that for 2.5 years, decided I think I want to do college sports full time. And there was an opportunity to come over to Auburn to cover the Auburn Tigers for AL.com. Did that for a little over a year before deciding maybe I want to get into editing, or at least I want to try it. And I'm at a place in my life where editing, and certainly being fully remote, was appealing to me at the time. And so that's kind of where I am now. Like I said, 9 or 10 months into that gig.
What made you just make the decision to apply for the APSE Diversity Fellowship last year?
Yeah, so actually it was Dan Spears, who's obviously the outgoing APSE president, and then past president Tommy Dees. Those are two of the guys that I report to in my current role. And, to be honest, I hadn't heard of it, didn't know what it was. And those two were like, hey, you should look into this, you should apply. I put it off, as I usually do, but snuck in an application, and I guess was just one of the lucky ones.
How did you find out that you were accepted, and how did it feel?
Yeah, so George Rojas at The Athletic called me one night. I was sitting in my apartment with my dog, just like I am right now. And, he called me, and he just let me know. And, he's like, hey, this is, you're going to be one of 5 or 6. I can't remember the exact number, and I can't do math in my head. But, you're going to be one of, 5 or 6 of this 13th class. And kind of here's what it means for you and what we'll need from you. And, mark these dates. These are your blackout dates. Don't plan anything here because you'll be in Nashville or judging or conference or what have you. And I say, yes, sir, you got it. He yelled at me for calling him sir. I still called him sir. But, that's kind of how that conversation went. But, just based on what I had heard from, Dan and Tommy, and in my research, I could tell that it was a great opportunity for my career. It was a great opportunity to get in the same room as, again, with other like-minded individuals, and learn from those who are kind of going up through this, leadership journey like I am, while also learning from those who are kind of more embedded in it and have a little bit of more experience. And it definitely lived up to all of that.
So you really start the fellowship there in Nashville. Tell me about that experience and what some takeaways were from Nashville for you.
Yeah. There were really great, insightful conversations. I just turned 27. So, I was only 26 whenever I became an editor, and, I had no idea what the heck I was doing, or, Tommy and Dan were the ones who, ultimately decided to hire me. And I kind of thought they were crazy. And, cause what do you mean? I'm 26 years old and you're going to trust me to do X, Y, and Z. And, but, going to Nashville and being in the same room as a guy like Chris Thomas, who obviously is, kind of way, way, way above me on the USA Today chain of command. But he became an editor at a young age, and, he was able to, give us some really, really good advice and share some wisdom on what that's like. I'm half the age. I'm half as old as, some of the people that I technically manage. I don't like that word, or lead, if you will. And, there are difficulties with that, and there's imposter syndrome for you as a young person. And, learning from somebody like that who, was able to draw from a very similar experience was great. Being in the same room as somebody like Joe Sullivan, who obviously is about as seasoned as they come, and really, really funny and fun to talk to, was great too. And, and then from the women's perspective, to be able to just have conversations with people like Nyla Myers or Roxana Scott or Lisa Wilson, just women who have kind of forged a path and made, they've done it. And, just to have those connections and to have those relationships and talk about work or talk about our dogs. Me and Roxana Scott talked about our dogs for probably an hour and a half, just nonstop about our dogs. And again, just kind of being able to make those connections there in Nashville was great. And then, obviously not to mention, fellowshipping with the other fellows, right? we're all going to go through it together, and we all come from different walks of life, and we're doing different things, and we live in different places. And here's how we got here. Here's, the issues or, challenges that we've met and overcome, and here's how we did it. And so, just I'm a big person, you want to put yourself in the room with people you want to be like, or if you're the smartest in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. And I was not the smartest in the room, I can promise you that. So I knew I was probably right where I needed to be.
Is there anything, I'll just say, I understand you missed judging, so we'll skip over that. But anything else you want to add about your experience with the Diversity Fellowship and what you'll take away from this past year?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I missed judging as my grandmother passed away then, but I'm looking forward to making up for it this coming year. And, really, really bummed that I had to miss out on that experience because I know it's a big part of the fellowship. But, I don't know. I mean, I would just think that if you kind of fit the bill of, a young leader in sports journalism, that it's a great opportunity. I mean, like I said, from going to Nashville for a weekend of insight and great conversation, it's also, we have a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun in Nashville, right? Got to go to the Preds game. I'm a Floridian, and, yes, there's hockey, but I don't consider Florida a big hockey state. I guess I should, though, since the Panthers just won. I don't know. But it was very cold. There were flurries, and I was like, I got to get out of here. And so I left a little bit early because I was scared of, like, the roads icing over there. Like, Ainslie, it's not going to happen. I was like, but it could. Okay, and I'm leaving. So I left. And, but we had a lot of fun. And so it's a lot of fun. And, again, you meet so many people who – have countless connections. I can't tell you how many people came up to me and we're just like, if you ever, obviously we all know if you're part of this industry, we've all seen our fair share of layoffs and, just the industry kind of getting kicked around a little bit. And, I feel very safe in my current position. I'm not saying that, there's anything to read between the lines or anything, but I can't say how many people upon first meeting were like, hey, if you ever need anything, or if something ever pops up, or if you ever kind of find yourself needing something, reach out to me. Here's my email. Here's my number. And I think we can all attest that this is one of those industries where who means just as much as what if not maybe a little bit more. And so, just being able to be in those same rooms, under those same roofs, going to tie night, right? There was 46 of us at tie night at conference and doing all that kind of stuff is just, I feel like it benefited me so much from a knowledge standpoint, from a networking standpoint. I made a couple of friends doing it, everything that you could want from, that kind of experience, I feel like I got.
I'm so glad to hear it was such a great experience for you, Ainslie. So, well, thanks so much for your time and for talking about the Diversity Fellowship, and congratulations again on completing the program.
Thank you.